Hello, I am Michael Seasod. Some of you may wonder why I'm running this fundraiser, and what I meant by I wrote a metaphor on the trauma I experienced as a child. Well, let me give you some history. My father owned 3 houses right in the middle of the town of Los Rios. To supplement our income, he rented 2 of these houses out on a regular basis. Around the time I was 12 or 13, he rented one of these houses to a friend of his. This man was not only my father's friend, but he had many fans in our tiny town. He was a mechanic, and many came to him for vehicle repairs. But despite his positive reputation, he kept to himself, hidden behind a large wooden fence, and there was a good reason for that. He regularly came to our house to visit my father, and my siblings and I enjoyed these visits. The man made us bikes, he joked with us, and he was very friendly. We could also go over to his house regularly, and he would make us coffee and hot chocolate and have snacks. I don't know how many days, months it took before I started sleeping over at his house. I don't need to go into detail on what happened next, but I can tell you how I felt. I can tell you the game he played. At 13 or 14, I was convinced that he loved me. And people who are in love have sexual relationships. Not only that, he made some promises that I could only fantasize about. We were going to move to Guatemala. We were going to build a house of my design. It was going to be a great adventure. In a sense, this evil man manipulated me into believing that he was my first true love. And I didn't know anything was wrong. I was happy. But, of course, like all cases of molestation, it had to remain a secret. And that too was tantalizing for my childish mind. Mind you, at this time of my life, I was sexually inexperienced and ignorant. My mother was already deceased, and my father was a strict Catholic and believed sex outside of marriage and homosexuality was a sin. My knowledge of the subject was constrained to schoolboy conversations. To top it off, my father was already in his 60s with a heart condition. And so he used language to manipulate me. You couldn't possibly tell your father, he would tell me it would kill him. Not only that, people hate gays. It's dangerous for people like us. I knew this was true at the time, and I believed him, and I kept my mouth shut about it. This affair between adult and child lasted less than a year, and then it came to an abrupt, bitter end. This pedophile suddenly hated me. It was so abrupt and angry and hate-filled, and seemingly without reason. He didn't want me to see me anymore. Told my father I wasn't allowed to go over. And when I did see him, he called me terrible things and told me I was a sick person. To add insult to injury, the reason he called me sick was because he accused me of liking little kids. Imagine telling a 13 or 14-year-old they're sick for liking little kids. He projected his own sickness onto me, no matter how ridiculous his manipulation worked. He scared me, he made me feel bad, and I bottled up. For years, I dealt with the guilt and pain. For the longest time, I hated myself. I only divulged my secret to a select few people, such as my current wife. And I'm glad I did, because talking about it helps. But I still kept it mostly secret. It wasn't until my late 20s that I hit the bottom of the barrel. Quite literally, I was drinking heavily and was contemplating suicide. And if it weren't for a very close group of friends, I may have followed through with it. Instead, I opened up to them and then started seeing a campus psychiatrist, and that began my recovery. Today, I am fully aware that I have nothing to be ashamed of and find myself angry. It's hard to believe that I could have been so gullible. I know that he was just using me to get off. And when he realized the gang was becoming too dangerous, he ostracized me, cut me out of his life, and kept me under control using intimidation, fear, accusations, and lies. I wrote The Unfettered Child, and it was not about molestation. It's a fantasy piece. It has nothing to do with that. But it is about the manipulation of a child. And as I wrote it, I realized that I had incorporated the language of my abuser into my antagonist. And that is why I say it is a metaphor on the trauma I experienced as a child. Writing this book was very difficult for me because of so many things, but Samara's trials with Hiltude resonated with my past, and I often found myself tearing up as I typed it. That is why a year later, I started the Unfettered Child's fundraiser for Prevent Child Abuse America. It's an organization I found that seems to be very active in this field, preventing child abuse, not just molestations, but neglect, just child abuse, physical abuse, any of it. It funds programs that help prevent these types of situations and educate families on how to stop it. And this is a very important subject to me, and I beg you, please help me prevent child abuse. Today is the last day for any donations, but I thank everyone who has made any contributions, and